Good morning. The prelude this morning was written by Johann Sebastian Bach for the first Advent Sunday for a chorale cantata, and it was played November 1731. It's Wachen auf, ruft und Stimme, and it is Wake, Awake, a Voice is Calling.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning and welcome to the Treasure Coast Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stuart, Florida. Today is Sunday, November the 29th, 2020. My name is Janet Rader and I will be your worship associate today. We are happy to have our own Bill Falk in our pulpit today. And a big thank you to those who are helping with the service. Bruce Ruby, our music director, our Zoom host, Corina Pelloni, and our backups, Worship Associate Judy Clow. We will mute everyone to avoid any noise in the background. Please remain muted. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome people of all gender identities, races, ages, and backgrounds. Thank you for being with us today. We're holding Zoom services every Sunday at 11 o'clock. Announcements are in our Friday online newsletter. To be put on our email list or to find out more information about us, go to our website at tcuuc.org. In the Friday newsletter, there will be a link you can use to get into the following Sunday's Zoom service. While you are there, please notice the link for online giving, or you could always mail a check to 21 Southeast Central Parkway, Stuart, Florida, 34997. Thank you so very much. I will now light our chalice. As we face this bright morning, we are apart, but we're together. It is in a new way, but an old way, that we come together in worship today. We have just celebrated Thanksgiving in a new way. For many of us, our relationship with home has intensified this year. The pandemic has given many of us new application for and concerns about the places we call home and the certainty of these places in our lives. This holiday, let us be grateful in a genuine manner. Let our gratitude flow from our deep, ongoing commitment to justice and equity. Let our gratitude grow from the opportunities we have to be together authentically, whether virtually or in person. May it be a time to reflect and find meaning in how our shared values connect us. Bruce will play and sing hymn 224, Let Christmas Come.
Let Christmas come, its story told, when days are short and winds are cold. Let Christmas come, its lovely song, when evening soon and day is long. Let Christmas come, its great star glow on quiet cities, parts of snow. Let Christmas come, its day will gleam, the born again, the truth of dreams.
Let us now recite our affirmation, speaking the first verse and singing the second. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
From all that dwelling on the skies, let songs of faith and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung. From every land, by every tongue.
We will now have our time for all ages, presented by our religious education coordinator, Corina Pelloni.
Hi, everybody. So in a moment, we will enjoy a music video of a Kwanza song. But first, I'll confess that I do not know much about Kwanza. So I had to conjure via Google the following context. For others like me who might have kind of a vague concept of what Kwanza is about, but not a true knowledge of its substance or history. So Dr. Maulana Karenga created Kwanza in 1966. He wanted to bring African Americans together as a community by creating a new common cultural ground. I want to acknowledge that he's a complex figure, and his past includes some inexcusable violent criminal activity. But the work he did as a proponent of the Black liberation movement can't be dismissed. And his understanding of social ethics and culture led him to create the Kwanza celebration. So Kwanza combines aspects of harvest or first fruit celebrations from different African cultures, such as Ashanti and Zulu. And the name Kwanza comes from a Swahili phrase meaning first fruits. The celebration lasts 7 nights starting on December 26th. And each night, a candle is lit and one of 7 principles is discussed. The principles are values of African culture that contribute to the building and reinforcing of community. And those principles are unity, self-determination, collective work, and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. So as a person that doesn't celebrate or participate in Kwanza celebrations, there's one thing that really stands out to me about Kwanza as a holiday, and that is that we can consciously develop rituals that fit our needs in the present tense, rather than accepting rituals that are born of years and years of evolution through culture that don't necessarily fit our needs any longer. Not that, history and longstanding culture should be ignored or completely displaced, but that we have some power and some creative freedom to change things so that they fit our present needs better. So let me get this video pulled up here. Did that play okay for everybody? It did? Great. I hope you enjoyed it. I really liked its cheerful spirit. Okay, so back to you, Janet. Thanks everybody for sharing that.
Thank you, Corina. Now is our time for sharing joys and sorrows. I will move a stone from our symbolic river to mark each joy or sorrow. Please keep your joys and sorrows brief. Raise your hand to share, and Corina will unmute you to speak. Okay, I will move a stone for anyone whose joys or sorrows were too personal to share, to know that you are also in our thoughts. We'll go to Spirit of Life.
Jesus, who taught me goes, brings set me free, Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, Bruce. As I said, we are pleased to have our own Bill Falk with us this morning to deliver the sermon. Dr. Falk has long been active in our church, including having been our board of directors president. Prior to moving to Florida, Bill was a professor of sociology and African American studies at the University of Maryland. For 40 years, he taught and wrote widely about the contemporary American South. Today, he will be drawing some on his sociological training, but mostly on his 45 years as a UU. Bill?
Okay, so I'm going to start with a little rendition of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and then I'm going to talk some about why I got focused on this notion of did someone take Christ out of Christmas? So here we go. This is "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," Florida style. "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the town, no noses were frozen, no snow fluttered down. No children in flannels were tucked into bed. They all wore shorty pajamas instead. To find wreaths of holly was not very hard, for holly wreaths grew in every backyard. In front of the houses were daddies and moms, adorning poinsettias and coconut palms. The slumbering kiddies were dreaming with glee that they would find skateboards under the tree. They all knew that Santa was well on his way in a green Ford Mustang instead of a sleigh. He whizzed down the highway and zoomed up the roads in a snappy convertible, peddling his loads. As he jumped from the car, he gave a deep chuckle. He was dressed in Bermudas with an Ivy League buckle. There weren't any chimneys, but that caused no gloom, for Santa came in through the Florida room. He stopped at each house and he stayed only a minute as he emptied his bag of the toys that were in it. Before he departed, he treated himself to a glass full of orange juice left on the shelf. He leaped in the car and put it in gear and drove over bridges, singing with cheer. Then we heard him exclaim as he went on his way, "Merry Christmas, South Florida. I wish I could stay." This rewrite of the famous Night Before Christmas rhyme is my introduction to what I want to talk about today. Did someone take Christ out of Christmas? The rhyme references children excited in anticipation of what is to come, a Christmas tree, toys, and a general sense of merriment. To quote from a famous Christmas song, "It's the holiday season, lots of toys for girls and boys." Ah, yes, we are entering that joyful time of year when gift giving and depression both get highlighted. I thought of the emphasis one usually finds at this time of year on family, celebration, gift giving, eating, and community, but also seeing car magnets and yard signs saying, "Keep Christ in Christmas." These fairly recent public proclamations have a long history, but again, in more recent years, have become part of a larger campaign, the War on Christmas. Knowing this, I really began to wonder about to what degree and in what ways someone took Christ out of Christmas. And that is what I want to talk about this morning. I will not try to enlist any of you in the Christian army for referenced in that famous hymn, "Onward Christian Soldiers," with its line about marching as to war. So no need to get ready for a battle, at least I hope not. But I will try to provide a little history on this war, including the roles played by Unitarians, people suited up for battle long ago. One other thing you should know, as I prepared today's talk, I Googled up a storm looking for helpful information. If you wonder how much interest there might be in my topic, well, as it turns out, a lot. If you type in the war in Christmas, you get over 20 million results. Type in keep Christ in Christmas, you get 18 million results. Excuse me. You also discover how even high moral purpose is caught up in capitalism and commercialized. If you are still wondering about some Christmas gifts, you can buy Keep Christ in Christmas posters, refrigerator magnets, yard signs, bumper stickers, car magnets, cards, and t-shirts. This stuff would not get produced if there wasn't interest in it. And as I say, a lot of interest. So now, on with the main story. Oops. Pardon. This is a brief history of the War on Christmas. There have been lots of skirmishes in the War on Christmas, including ones long ago. In England, the Puritan government of Oliver Cromwell banned Christmas celebrations. In Massachusetts, also at the time under Puritan rule, Christmas was banned from 1659 to 1681. And even with King James' intervention, Christmas did not become popular until the 1850s. George Washington and his troops crossed the Delaware on December 25th, so not much celebrating on that day. And after the Revolutionary War, Christmas was not celebrated because it was, in quotes, too British. Maybe that's been the problem in my house with a British wife. Even today, some Christian fundamentalists condemn Christian as a holiday with pagan origins based in the winter solstice. Although many commentators state that the war on Christmas started with Bill O'Reilly, to the degree that there has ever been such a war, the contemporary war started long before the advent of O'Reilly and Fox News. In the 1920s, Henry Ford felt that a war was being waged by Jews, asking in a speech how, in quotes, 10 Jewish students can abolish the mention of Christmas and Easter out of schools containing 3,000 Christian pupils, close quotes. Or more broadly, as he said, again quoting, how can 3 million Jews control the affairs of 100 million Americans? Close quotes. Again, this was Henry Ford writing now nearly 100 years ago. In 1959, the John Birch Society published a pamphlet alerting the nation to an, in quotes, assault on Christmas. Who was carrying out the assault? The UN. I'm not kidding. The Birch Society argument was that the UN was calling for US department stores to use UN symbols and emblems as Christmas decorations. Bill O'Reilly, in his book, Culture Warrior, is almost always cited as the contemporary historical marker for the war. His book includes a chapter titled The Battle for Christmas. There he documents many instances of school districts and city councils yielding to pressure from aggrieved parents, often represented by attorneys, demanding that any, in quotes, holiday symbols and or celebrations be essentially de-Christianized. In turn, retail stores, fearing similar legal problems, fell in line with Target, Walmart, and Kohl's as prominent examples. O'Reilly himself becomes a self-described martyr in this battle with the loathed by Fox viewers, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, and other large metropolitan newspapers chastising him. But with his large audience, O'Reilly has many supporters. He writes that while many mainstream journalists and writers loathe him, in quotes, I loathe many of them right back. His successors at Fox News all follow in the same vein. Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, they are all members of the Fox choir. While O'Reilly's book was published in 2005, the war rages on, sort of. It has definitely become an annual thing with considerable attention each holiday season. Christmas season for the past decade. A couple of years ago, for example, excuse me, an article in the Jackson, Mississippi newspaper ran a piece with this heading, "The War on Christmas Has Begun." This seems to have become as predictable as Christmas decorations in retail stores, along with Christmas music, movies, parades, trees, and eggnog. Like it or not, Santa Claus is coming to town. Oh, and one other factoid from the War on Christmas. Santa Claus is white. Jesus too. At least that's what former Fox News's Megan Kelly said in one of her commentaries responding to an article published in Slate magazine a couple of years ago. She tried to retract the statement, saying that it was in jest, but by then the idea of dreaming about a white Christmas was out there. What is crucial to know from all of this, if you didn't already, is that there are a lot of Americans, millions, who feel that their religion is to some degree under attack. Gay marriage, women's rights, Black Lives Matters, these are all issues which for some challenge the views they hold near and dear. Donald Trump seems to have understood this better than many of us and mobilized these people into a more general war on the mainstream media, Washington elites, and the political class. I'm not saying I think he's entirely correct, but rather summarizing how some folks see themselves as victimized and our country as on the wrong track. This was true in 2016, and one gets the impression that it is still true today, given the results of the 2020 presidential election. While Trump lost, 73 million of our fellow citizens voted for him. With Trump and most of his supporters, one gets a strong sense of it's us versus them. UUs on the other hand, consider themselves to be nearly heroic in their commitment to the, in quotes, dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, peace, liberty, and justice for all. Oops, this thing just scooted away. Respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. Let me just repeat this. UUs, on the other hand, consider themselves to be nearly heroic in their commitment to the dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. This should sound very familiar to many of you. I drew it directly from the UU 7 principles, which form the theological heart of our faith. I will bookend this by also drawing from UU's living tradition, wherein we are challenged to seek knowledge and understanding from Jewish and Christian teachings, humanist teachings, and spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, along with words and deeds of prophetic women and men. In sum, a great breadth of inspiration, with no one tradition or paradigm necessarily holding sway over any other. Or phrased a bit differently, liberal religion. We are a welcoming congregation, as an ideal, even if we fall short sometimes. So where does this place us in the war on Christmas? Here is what conservative writer and former Fox News contributor has to say in his book, The War on Christmas. I'm quoting, the large number of foot soldiers waging the war on Christmas is in fact made up mostly of liberal white Christians, many of whom may have Jewish sounding names, and he cites a few, that could mislead readers to a dangerous and very unfair conclusion. So let's state for the record, the wagers of this war are a cabal of secularist, so-called humanist, trial lawyers, cultural relativists, and liberal, guilt-racked Christians, not just Jewish people. Muslims are not big players in this anti-Christian movement. I'm still quoting, providing the legal muscle and pretzel logic to the anti-Christmas warriors are brand name liberal institutions such as the ACLU, the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, and the Americans for the Separation of Church and State. Some institutional backers of the war on Christmas are Christian churches, such as the Unitarians and the United Church of Christ, who celebrate Jesus Christ's humanity and leave the room when discussion turns to divinity. These are the churches that marry gays and turn their backs on preborn babies. They are liberal by definition, and they proclaim their liberal values. In this book, I begin to connect the dots and discern the outlines of the conspiracy. So there you have it. You are guilty of being warriors against Christmas, whether you know it or not. So are we? In fact, what you should know is that UUs were at the forefront of making Christmas celebratory again in the mid-1800s, or as UU minister Nathan Dettering stated in his sermon title only a few years ago, How Unitarians Save Christmas, and now I'm quoting. This kind of Christmas, the true Christmas that was only about Jesus or only about spiritual matters, never really existed. I hope this is freeing news for you. You don't have to feel guilty, because in fact, Christmas over the centuries has always been a hodgepodge of celebration, merriment, giving presents, getting together with family and friends, buying frivolous decorations. Then he says, anyone seen the giant inflatable Santas? And religious story. And this is probably not news. Many of the Christian traditions we celebrate have their origins in the celebrations of the winter solstice. So a few facts before we get to our solstice-centered story this morning. Long before the Christmas lights and cell phones and TVs illuminated our homes, the darkness and cold and retreating sun made many people depressed and even rather scared. So when the ancient people started to see the sun return, as it will on Friday, and at great risk, I'm having to X out something here, as it will on Friday, after the shortest day of the year, these people celebrated the event with big dinners and singing and even exchanging gifts. Some of their symbols of revelry are still with us: holly and ivy and wreaths and decking the halls with greens. A tradition they also had is one that we've heard of: kissing under the mistletoe. Another fact, the early Christian church did not celebrate Jesus' birth at all. In other words, there were no Christmas Eve services and no pageants and no ministers trying to make sense of it all. Only over centuries, and only after the solstice feast turned really wild and out of control, did Christians seek to offer an alternative, calling it Christ Mass or Christmas. Another fact, nobody was as hard on Christmas as the Puritans, the folks who built the pews you're sitting in, who thought that Christmas wasn't biblical and Jesus wouldn't have approved of any holiday celebrations. They ordered shops to stay open on Christmas, banned holiday cakes and candles, and also managed to have the Christmas Congress declare Christmas illegal from 1659 to 1681. Bah, humbug. At last, some final facts to make us Unitarians feel good. Christmas, as we know it, didn't really get going until the mid-1800s. And that was largely because of one story. A Christmas Carol, written by Unitarian Charles Dickens. Another fact, how many of us have Christmas trees at home? Well, for that, you can thank Charles Falk, minister of our Unitarian congregation in Lexington, Massachusetts, who introduced the idea of the Christmas tree to New England, a tradition that has German and pagan roots. And best of all, Unitarian James Pierpont wrote Jingle Bells. Unitarians also composed the tunes, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, and It Came a Midnight Clear. And who can forget The Night Before Christmas? Well, that too was written by a Unitarian. So Unitarians saved Christmas? I think so. And if you think of Christmas traditions, especially decorating a tree, gift giving, children's anticipation of Christmas morning, families getting together, etc., then we UUs played a big role in reinstating these things. If you will, we helped to form what became the basis of Christmas as we now think of it, not the commercial aspect, but the social one. Our sense of this is sharpened by its opposite, captured beautifully by Dr. Seuss with his The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. Are we UUs maybe to some degree a bunch of Grinches? Have we, over the long sweep of history since the mid-1800s, become less Christmassy in a traditional way and too accepting and promoting and of celebrating non-traditional Christmas holidays? Here is what UU minister Miriam Naaman Sessions has to say about this. Throughout history, there have been Grinches on both sides of the Christmas controversy. I'm sure the Unitarians felt a little Grinchy towards the Puritans for trying to ban Christmas, just as Bill O'Reilly feels Grinchy about nativity scenes being removed from public property. I think it is important to ask the broad question of what makes someone a Grinch. Conservative news pundits would have us believe it is anyone who attempts to lessen the Christ in Christmas, or the cultural practices that have come to be associated with the holiday. For example, Christmas music, lights, parties, decorations, gift giving, the list goes on. However, I think it is important to define Grinch more broadly. Since Seuss's Grinch is often credited as being a critique of the consumerist aspects of the holiday season, readers can sometimes overlook the book's more important underlying theme, inclusiveness and the heart of community. Tolerance in a world community are principles Dr. Seuss promoted in much of his work, and these concepts resonate deeply with our UU principles. After all, the Grinch attempts to steal Christmas by taking all the presents, food, decorations, even the Yule log, but he is still unable to stop Christmas from coming. Why was the Grinch unsuccessful? Because he misunderstood the Who's reason for the season: family, community, and goodwill. You could make the argument that one of the central tenets of being a Grinch is attempting to steal, suppress, or detract joy from others during the holiday season. This can include forcing one's notion of the holiday on others. Taking the joy of the holiday away from others is one of the more obvious harms of being a Grinch. So I have to ask, are maybe the Christmas warriors a bunch of Grinches because they want to force their idea of the holiday on all of us? Or does our UU spirit of welcoming diversity and difference of opinions allow us to accept this point of view, even if we disagree with it, thus perhaps letting each unto his or herself find joy as they wish in their idea of the holiday? I think the secret to enjoying the holidays is finding a way to make them your own, to create your own special rituals and traditions, and to take ownership of them. It seems only fitting to cite a Seussian rhyme: the true meaning of Christmas need be of no concern, for it is whatever we make it, each of ourselves to discern. Now back to me. Where does all of this leave us with respect to keeping Christ in Christmas and the so-called war on Christmas. As with many things, it all depends on one's point of view. Mine as a sociologist leads me to this conclusion, citing my influence by Lewis Carroll in his Alice in Wonderland tome, Through the Looking Glass. Words mean what I choose to mean, neither more nor less. One person's war may be another person's accommodating demographic and social change. It doesn't necessarily make one right and the other wrong. It simply means that they may have different points of view. Okay, there. Like looking at an abstract painting or citing Karl Marx's famous observation about social class. Where you stand determines what you see. In fact, while I'm on this point, as an aside, whenever we can get back into church, be sure to look at the tertiary and our narthex. I mean really look at it up close and all the way around it. There is much more there than meets the eye in a casual glance. Where you stand determines what you see. Check it out sometime. Although you have to be physically present there to do it. Now, back to Christ in Christmas. UUs are, more than most religions, comfortable with diverse points of view, even on occasion conflicting ones. For them in general, religious faith is organic. It is dynamic. It is not static, holding to one view only forevermore on men. But for many religious people of all kinds of faiths, there is one true way, theirs. For us as UUs, this is troublesome. When we were children within our families, we accepted a view of the world as unchallenged, unquestioned. Our parents' view of the world was the view of the world. That is how we learned about the world and how we saw it, as they did. But as they got older, as we met other children and spent time in their homes, we discovered that not everything our family did squared with what these other people did. They had one set of rules, we had another. They said grace before meals, we didn't. They were of one religion, we of another. Did this make them wrong and us right? No, it simply meant that we were learning that the social world is a complex place and understanding our place in it wasn't going to be easy. The early 20th century sociologist W.I. Thomas understood this well. He saw how people cognitively framed the worlds in which they lived, and knowing this, had their entire view of reality colored by it. Or as he put it, situations defined as real are real in their consequences. If you think it and believe it, you may act upon it. And you will often do this in ways that reaffirm over and over why your view is correct. So is there a war on Christmas, one in which Christ has been removed? Situations defined as real are real in their consequences. For people who believe this strongly, they find often in their news sources and opinions they hear expressed that yes, there is such a war, not just on Christmas, but on Christians more generally. For us, I suspect, a very different narrative can be constructed with a different conclusion reached. To play off a seasonal tune, do you hear what I hear? Let me return to Dr. Seuss's rhyme. The true meaning of Christmas need be of no concern, for it is whatever we make it, each of ourselves to discern. So now let me turn to the closing part of my talk. As we enter the holiday season, for all of us, whether young or old, we remember Christmases or holiday seasons past. We remember what was and look forward to what we hope will be coming. In fact, we work hard at times to do all we can to ensure this. To help us down with this trip down memory lane and to end on a much lighter note, here are a few popular culture movie references to jog your memory. It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, A Christmas Story, Love Actually, A Charlie Brown Christmas, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, Elf, Scrooge, The Muppet Christmas, National Lampoon's Christmas, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Or how about some songs? Little Drummer Boy, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, the Chipmunks song, I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, Do You Hear What I Hear, Santa Baby, Elvis's Blue Christmas, Bing Crosby's White Christmas, I'll Be Home for Christmas, A Holly Jolly Christmas, Bruce Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Adam Sandler's Happy Hanukkah, and how about Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer? And I have some Christmas carols here, but I'm going to skip those Christmas carols. All of these movies, songs, and had I have done the carols, for many of us, are reminders of seasons past. I suspect that if I had read these more slowly and given you time to reflect on them, many of us would remember fairly well these movies and the words to many of the songs and the carols. The holiday season is definitely a reflective time, an end to the calendar year and getting ready to start a new one. To help you with this, let me close with this challenge. Get those chestnuts roasting by an open fire. Go in search of Jack Frost nipping at anyone's nose or folks dressed up like Eskimos. Whether it comes upon a midnight clear or do you hear what I hear? Whether merrily on high or decking the hall with boughs of holly. See if you can hear the bells on Christmas Day or jingle bells or sleigh bells or hark the herald angels sing. Whether in a one-horse open sleigh or tucked in your bed with visions of sugar plums dancing through your head, go tell it on a mountain or have a silent night. Regardless, have yourself a merry little Christmas, or happy Hanukkah, or joyful Kwanza, or Seinfeld-influenced Festivus, or whatever you wish to celebrate and however you wish to do it. And oh yes, may all your days be merry and bright. Before we turn to our last hymn, let me add one personal note to my talk today. Nothing is more traditional at this time of year than giving gifts to others, showing love, appreciation, in some ways acknowledging one's gratitude for this person or institution. Especially this year, it would be wonderful if our members and friends would show this kind of sentiment with respect to our church. Having just enjoyed, even if in a COVID sort of way, Thanksgiving, we have much to be thankful for. For many of us, the results of the presidential election, news of a COVID vaccine, a sense of optimism for the months ahead. Well, let us also be thankful for TCUUC and be mindful that a financial gift here keeps paying rewards long after shirts, sweaters, ties, and other material gifts have long gone out of fashion or worn out. Now let's turn to our last hymn.
The last hymn is I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day.
In despair, I bow. a song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then peal the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail. For peace on earth, goodwill to men.
These are the closing words I've chosen. This is by Kathleen McTeague with one small edit by me. We come together this morning to remind one another, to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our virtual presence together.
Thank you, Bill. I know that I'm especially thankful that your video and audio worked, because that was an amazing message about the history of the UUs, which I am new to and especially appreciated, and just an amazing presentation. And thank you, Bruce, as always. I'm going to now extinguish the chalice, but keep its light in our hearts and its message of love and justice. Oops. After the postlude, please join us for the coffee hour.
I'm not sure that James Lord Pierpont would approve of this arrangement of a holiday song that you all know. It was published in 1857 under the title Open Horse and Sleigh.